All right, so you're thinking about setting up a home server and maybe diving into all those self-hosted services you hear about. It's really a cool way to take control of your data and, play with a ton of cool tech. Today, we're doing a deep dive on Proxmox. It's a virtualization platform that is, well, it's really perfect for both beginners and people who've been doing this for a while. And we are going to be looking at excerpts from Proxmox for Beginners, setting up your first home server. This thing is a gold mine of practical info, let me tell you.
What I find really interesting about Proxmox is that it brings all the power of like a professional virtualization platform, but it makes it so easy to use.
Yeah, it's like you're getting the keys to a race car.
Yeah.
But all the complicated controls are replaced with like a simple dashboard. And the cool thing is it can handle both.
Yeah.
Those full virtual machines, those VMs, but also containers. So you got options.
Yeah, that dual functionality is a huge differentiator. VMs are basically like having entirely separate computers, right? They're running inside of your server. So let's say you want to run like Windows alongside your Linux setup. VMs can do that, all on the same hardware. Containers, on the other hand, are much more lightweight. They're perfect for when you just need to run a specific service. You don't need the whole bloat of a full operating system.
And this is really where things get interesting, especially if you're new to this whole home server thing. Proxmox has these awesome backup and snapshot features. So you can imagine, you're experimenting with a new network configuration, and you totally mess something up. Well, with Proxmox's snapshots, you can revert back to a previous working state like that. You're saving yourself hours of troubleshooting.
It really takes a lot of the pressure off,
Okay.
and it really encourages you to just experiment and just learn by doing.
You're not going to break anything permanently. And if you ever get stuck, there's this massive community of Proxmox users online, really active. So if you like video tutorials, head over to YouTube. You want to get in the weeds, the forums are great.
It's a testament to the platform's popularity, being open source. And that community can be so valuable, especially when you're first getting started. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about actually setting Proxmox up.
Okay, the installation. So first, hardware. You don't need some crazy expensive machine to run Proxmox. An older PC can often be enough.
As long as it meets the minimum requirements. The guide recommends a 64-bit processor with virtualization support, at least 2 gigs of RAM, though more is always better, and an SSD for the operating system. Of course, you can use traditional hard drives for, the bulk of your data storage.
It's really important to think about how you're going to organize all that storage right from the get-go. So Proxmox can work on a single drive, but using multiple drives.
Yeah.
Especially, using SSDs for speed and then hard drives for capacity, it can make a huge difference.
Definitely plan out your storage. It'll save you lots of headaches later.
Okay, so you got your hardware figured out. Now you need to install Proxmox. First, you head over to the Proxmox website, download the Proxmox VE image. Then you need to create a bootable USB drive. So use a tool like Balena Etcher or Rufus. You boot your server from that USB drive, and it walks you through the rest.
It's super user-friendly. Select your hard drive, configure your network, set a root password. That's pretty much it. Proxmox is installed. Once it's up and running, you can access it through any web browser. Just enter your server's IP address.
It really is that easy.
Yeah.
Before you start making virtual machines and containers, though, there are a few key configurations.
First things first, you got to update Proxmox. This makes sure you have the latest version, all the security patches and all. You can update from the command line or directly from the web interface, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Okay, so next, network configuration. To make sure you can always access your server, it's a good idea to set a static IP address.
And finally, you'll want to configure your storage. Remember how we talked about planning that out? Well, this is where you actually do it. Proxmox lets you use the same drive for both the operating system and the VM storage. But like we said, adding more drives, especially those SSDs, can really boost your server speed.
Okay, so you've got Proxmox installed, it's configured, it's updated. Now it's time for the fun part. Creating your first VM or container. Let's start with VMs. So think of them as like totally independent operating systems running inside your server. You could have like Windows running alongside Linux, each in its own little world.
And creating a VM through the Proxmox web interface, it's surprisingly straightforward. You just upload the installation ISO for whatever operating system you want.
Yeah.
And then you install it, just like you would on a regular computer.
Containers, on the other hand, those are all about running specific services. You don't need a full operating system. They're lightweight, they're efficient, perfect for things like hosting a website or maybe streaming your media collection.
Yeah.
You could set up a web server using, say, a containerized version of Apache or Nginx, or create your own personal Netflix using a media server like Jellyfin. You could even run Pi-hole in a container to block ads across your whole network.
Setting up a container is just as easy as creating a VM. Choose an operating system template. Adjust the resources it can use through the web interface, and you're good to go.
It's this combination of power and ease of use that makes Proxmox so great for someone building their first home server. It can grow with you as you learn and as your needs change.
And don't forget about that safety net we talked about. Those backup and snapshot features, real peace of mind.
We touched on it a little bit earlier, but Proxmox lets you schedule those regular backups of your VMs and your containers. Or you can create manual snapshots before you make any big changes, especially important for anyone who wants to experiment without the risk of losing anything.
So let's say you're trying out a new app, and it causes some issues. With a Proxmox snapshot, you can rewind your VM to a previous state, like a few clicks. You can even store those backups on a separate drive, or NAS, or even in the cloud.
Now that we've talked about the basics of VMs and containers and backups and snapshots, let's talk about some of the exciting things you can do with Proxmox. Expand your home server's functionality.
Once you've got Proxmox running, it's like the possibilities are endless. Media servers, network storage, ad blocking, even home automation.
Media servers are super popular. You could run something like Jellyfin or Plex inside a VM or a container. And then your entire media library, movies, music, photos, it's all accessible from all the devices on your network.
Like having your own personal streaming service. But you control it, and no monthly fees. If you want to share files between devices, Proxmox can also be like a network-attached storage device, a NAS.
You can run software like Open Media Vault in a VM or container. Turns your Proxmox server into the central hub for storing and sharing all your files.
Like your own private cloud. And remember Pi-hole, that network-wide ad blocker. Another great service you can run on Proxmox.
Imagine a home network, no annoying ads on any of your devices. That's the power of Pi-hole running on Proxmox. And you can even run home automation platforms on Proxmox. Things like Home Assistant.
Home Assistant lets you control all sorts of smart devices, lights, thermostats, security systems, and it automates tasks. Running that on Proxmox gives you a really stable platform for managing your smart home.
It really shows that Proxmox is way more than just a platform for setting up a few basic services. It's an environment for learning and experimenting, whether you're just starting out with home servers or you're a seasoned pro.
Yeah, the great thing about Proxmox is that it gives you this safe space to tinker, try out new software, really deepen your understanding of how this stuff works, virtualization, system management, and with those backups and snapshots, you can try new things and even make mistakes without worrying about messing anything up permanently.
Like a virtual playground, break things, learn how they work, put them back together. And by running multiple services in those isolated environments, either in VMs or containers, you can keep everything organized, prevent any conflicts between your different services.
So as we've seen, Proxmox offers a ton of power and flexibility, but it's still really easy to use.
It's awesome for setting up your first home server. It lets you run a ton of services, explore all these new technologies, and you gain valuable experience with virtualization and system administration. It's a great starting point for anyone who wants to take control of their data and their technology.
Yeah, it's really cool how it can work for beginners and then for people who are more experienced.
Yeah.
You can start simple, and then as you learn and your needs change, you can expand things.
It's like it has this built-in scalability. Dip your toes in with a basic setup, and then really dive deep into all the advanced features once you're comfortable. And that modular design with the VMs and containers, it means you can really compartmentalize your server, right? It makes it much easier to manage, to troubleshoot. But speaking of those more advanced features, let's say you've got the basics down, and you're ready to dive in. Where would you even begin?
Well, networking is one area I hear a lot about. Like, you can really control how your VMs and containers connect to your network.
Yeah.
And the outside world. Things like VLANs and virtual switches. I've heard of them, but they sound kind of intimidating.
I mean, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but they're really useful tools if you're serious about managing your home server. So VLANs, those virtual local area networks, they basically let you create separate, isolated networks within your physical network, like having multiple virtual highways, right? Each one carrying a different type of traffic.
So if I get this right, I could use VLANs to isolate my server traffic from the rest of my home network for security reasons.
Exactly. That's a common use case. You create a separate virtual network just for your server. Adds that extra layer of security. And then you have virtual switches. Think of them as traffic directors. They control how data flows between your VMs and your containers and your physical network, including those VLANs.
It's amazing how much control Proxmox gives you over your network. It's like you're your own little network administrator.
And as you get more comfortable with Proxmox, understanding those networking concepts, it really opens up a lot of possibilities. Another area where Proxmox is really great is resource management. You can really fine-tune how things like your CPU and RAM and disk space are allocated to your VMs and containers.
Makes sense. You wouldn't want one VM hogging all the resources and slowing everything down.
Right, and Proxmox gives you the tools to set those limits. You can prioritize certain VMs or containers, make sure everything runs smoothly.
So we talked a lot about backups and snapshots, right, as a safety net. But are there even more advanced options within Proxmox?
Oh, absolutely. Proxmox has a ton of choices for backing up and restoring your VMs and containers. Full backups, incremental backups. You can even replicate your whole setup to another Proxmox server or even a cloud provider.
Replication to another server or the cloud. That sounds serious, like something you'd see in a data center.
It really shows how powerful Proxmox is. I mean, it's used by businesses and organizations of all sizes for really important applications.
So even if my home server is just for me, I'm still using the same tools as the pros.
And learning those advanced backup and recovery strategies, that can be super valuable. Gives you the confidence to try new things, explore different configurations, knowing you can always restore your server if something goes wrong. Let's switch gears again. Let's talk about something that's super important for any server, especially one that's connected to the internet: security.
Yeah, you're basically opening up your home network to the outside world. So security has to be a top priority.
Absolutely, and Proxmox provides a really solid foundation, but there are definitely some things you can do to really harden your server and protect it from those potential threats out there.
What are some of the key things?
Well, first things first, keep Proxmox updated with all the latest security patches. We talked about updating right after installation, but it's important to keep those updates coming. They release updates pretty regularly to fix any vulnerabilities and make things more secure, just like any other software.
So just like keeping your computer's operating system updated. Same idea.
Exactly. Just as important is user management. Make sure you have strong passwords for all your Proxmox users. Nothing easy to guess. And for that extra layer of security, consider enabling two-factor authentication.
Yeah, two-factor authentication is pretty standard these days for anything connected to the internet.
And of course, we can't forget about firewalls. Proxmox has one built in. You can configure it to control all the incoming and outgoing traffic. Really important for locking down your server. Only allow connections on the ports you actually need.
Like building a virtual wall around your server.
Perfect analogy. And while we're talking about security, it's important to think about the security of the services you're running on Proxmox too.
So it's not just about securing Proxmox itself, but also thinking about each individual service running on it.
That's right. For example, if you're running a web server, make sure it's configured securely. Strong passwords, up-to-date software. Same goes for any service that's exposed to the internet. A vulnerability in one service could compromise your whole server.
It's like that saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Exactly. You got to secure every part of your server ecosystem to make sure the whole thing is secure. As you add more services and things get more complex, security should always be top of mind. Regularly review your settings, stay informed about any new vulnerabilities, take those proactive steps to reduce your risk.
Sounds like it's a continuous process.
It is, but it's so important. Security is an ongoing journey, right? You're always learning, adapting, staying ahead of the bad guys. So we've talked about the technical side of Proxmox, from the basics to those more advanced features and security considerations. But what about the human element? How does Proxmox fit into the bigger picture of someone's journey into this world of home servers?
I mean, it seems like Proxmox could be both a tool and a teacher.
I think that's a great way to put it. On one hand, it's a powerful tool for setting up and managing your home server. It gives you the platform and all the building blocks to create this customized environment for your needs.
Like the foundation for building your server dreams.
Exactly. But beyond being just a tool, Proxmox can also be a really valuable learning experience. As you're working with it, you're constantly learning about virtualization, networking, storage, security. It goes on and on.
Like a hands-on education, all that stuff, right from home.
And even if you're not planning on a career in IT or anything, the knowledge and skills you gain from using Proxmox can be really useful. I mean, technology is everywhere these days, and understanding how servers work can really give you a leg up.
Like learning a new language or mastering a musical instrument.
And what's great is that Proxmox is accessible to everyone, no matter your experience level. You can start with the basics, and then as you get more confident, you can go deeper.
Like having a personal tutor for server virtualization.
And don't forget about that amazing Proxmox community. Super welcoming and supportive, always happy to answer your questions, share their knowledge. You're never really alone on this journey.
It's that combination of a powerful platform and a supportive community and all those resources that makes Proxmox so special. You can really take control of your technology and create something amazing.
You know, it's really inspiring to see how Proxmox, it lets people become more than just passive users of technology. You get the tools to actually build your own servers, host your own services, take control of your digital life.
Yeah, it's like a shift, right? From relying on those big tech companies to becoming a creator yourself.
Yeah.
That feeling of ownership and control can be really rewarding.
Absolutely, especially in a world where we often feel like those big corporations have all the power. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Proxmox, I think it's worth stepping back for a second and looking at some of the bigger trends that Proxmox represents.
What kind of trends are you thinking about?
Well, we're seeing this growing movement
Yeah.
towards self-hosting, data privacy, and digital security. People are becoming more aware of how their data is being collected and used, and they're looking for ways to take back control.
Like a push for digital self-reliance.
Exactly. And Proxmox fits right into that. It lets you move away from relying on those big tech companies and create your own personal and private digital space.
It's like an alternative to that centralized, data-driven model
Yeah.
that we see everywhere online these days.
Exactly. And Proxmox is just one example of the tools and platforms that are making this kind of independence possible. Open source software, collaborative communities, sharing knowledge, it's all coming together.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be into tech. Individuals have more options than ever before.
Absolutely. And as we've seen with Proxmox, that open source model and the amazing community around it, they're really driving this change. It's all about shared knowledge, collective innovation, and making technology accessible to everyone.
So for anyone listening who's been thinking about setting up a home server, maybe they've heard about Proxmox, what would you tell them?
I'd say go for it. Embrace the challenge. It's a really rewarding experience. You'll learn a lot. You'll get to experiment, and you'll get that satisfaction of building something yourself.
You might surprise yourself with what you can do. That feeling of creating your own server environment is pretty special.
And remember, you don't have to be a tech whiz to get started. Proxmox is designed to be user-friendly, and that community is always there to help.
So whether you're looking for more privacy, or you just love technology, or you're just curious to learn something new,
Proxmox is a great opportunity to explore the world of home servers and virtualization, take control of your digital life, learn new things, and join a community of people who are doing the same.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Proxmox. We've covered so much. The basics of virtualization, advanced networking, security best practices, even the broader trends around self-hosting.
We looked at the benefits of setting up a home server, how easy and flexible Proxmox is, all the different services you can run, and the importance of community and security.
We hope you found this deep dive helpful, maybe even inspiring. Keep exploring Proxmox. See where it takes you.
Remember, technology is always changing. There's always something new to learn. So stay curious, embrace self-hosting, and join us next time for another deep dive into some corner of the tech world.
Until then, happy virtualizing.